What if winning a war could be the worst thing that ever happened to you? That is not a riddle. That is history, and it has happened more times than any general, king, or empire ever wanted to admit. We are told that victory is the goal, that if you fight hard enough, sacrifice enough, and outlast your enemy long enough, you earn the right to shape the world. But history has a darker lesson hidden beneath the celebration. Sometimes the moment you raise the flag over the ruins of your enemy is the exact moment you begin your own destruction. The cost of winning can be so enormous, so quietly catastrophic, that the loser walks away in better shape than the victor. 7 times in human history, the side that won the war lost everything that came after. 7 empires, nations, and powers that paid for their triumph with their own future. The pattern is so consistent, it almost feels like a law of the universe. And by the end of this video, you will never look at the word victory the same way again. But first, we need to talk about a tiny island nation in the North Atlantic that built the most powerful navy the world had ever seen, sent it into the greatest naval confrontation in history, watched it win a battle so completely that the enemy fleet was essentially erased from existence, and then quietly watched its own empire begin to die. The year is 1916. The Battle of Jutland has just concluded in the North Sea. The British Royal Navy has lost more ships, more tonnage, and more men than the German High Seas Fleet. By the cold arithmetic of naval warfare, Britain lost. And yet, something strange happened. The German fleet sailed back to port, and it never came out again in any meaningful way for the rest of the war. Britain still controlled the seas. Britain still enforced its blockade of Germany. Germany still starved. Britain technically lost the battle and won the war. But the real story is what happened after. Britain emerged from World War I as the nominal victor. The British Empire was at its largest geographic extent in history. Over a quarter of the Earth's land surface flew the Union Jack. It looked like the summit of power. And yet, Britain had spent a generation of its young men in the mud of France. It had borrowed money so aggressively from the United States that the financial center of the world quietly shifted from London to New York and never came back. The empire was enormous, but it was a hollow shell stretched far beyond what its economy, its manpower, or its political will could sustain. Within 30 years, the empire was dissolving. India gone. Palestine gone. The Suez Crisis of 1956 would be the final humiliation, when Britain and France were forced to back down from Egypt by the United States, the nation that had quietly taken Britain's place while Britain was busy winning its wars. This is what historians call imperial overstretch. You win so much that you cannot hold what you have won. But Britain is only the beginning, because Rome knew this feeling too, and Rome felt it much earlier. The Punic Wars against Carthage ended with Rome triumphant, Carthage literally salted into oblivion, and Rome standing as the unchallenged master of the Mediterranean world. Every schoolchild knows that Rome won. What they are rarely taught is what Rome became in the process. Before the wars with Carthage, Rome was a republic of farmers and citizen soldiers, men who fought in summer and returned to their land in autumn. But the Punic Wars ran for generations. While Roman soldiers were away, large landowners, enriched by war spoils and slave labor from conquered territories, bought out the small farms. Roman soldiers came home to find nothing waiting for them. Their farms were gone. Their families had moved to the cities. The class of independent Roman citizens that had been the backbone of the Republic for centuries had been erased by the very victories that Rome had won. The landless urban poor, the dispossessed veterans, the concentration of wealth and slaves at the top, these were not Roman weaknesses that enemies had exploited. They were Roman victories that Rome had inflicted on itself. The republic that defeated Carthage would be dead within a century, replaced by the dictatorship that would eventually become the empire we all recognize from movies and television. But even Rome's self-destruction is subtle compared to what happened to Spain after 1492. When Columbus returned from the Americas and the Spanish crown realized what it had stumbled upon, the floodgates opened. Conquistadors poured into the New World. Silver from Potosi and modern Bolivia and gold from across the Americas began flowing back to Spain in quantities that the world had never seen. Spain became, almost overnight, the wealthiest nation on Earth. It was a victory of almost incomprehensible scale. Spain did not just win a war. Spain won an entire hemisphere. And the silver broke Spain completely, because when you flood a country with precious metal faster than its economy can absorb, you get inflation. Not modest inflation. Catastrophic, civilization-level inflation. Prices in Spain rose by roughly 400% over the 16th century. Spanish goods became too expensive to export. Spanish industry withered because it was cheaper to import everything from England, France, and the Netherlands and pay for it with American silver. Spain became the most dramatic example in history of what economists now call the resource curse. The wealth was so enormous, so unearned by productive work, that it destroyed the habits of industry, innovation, and trade that create lasting power. By 1650, Spain was essentially bankrupt, repeatedly, despite being the owner of the richest colonies in the known world. The silver went in one end and out the other, straight into the hands of Spanish creditors, most of whom were not even Spanish. There is something almost cruel about these stories. These were not failed states or incompetent leaders making obvious mistakes. These were the greatest powers of their age, at the absolute peak of their strength, doing exactly what great powers are supposed to do, which is win. And the winning destroyed them, not the losing, the winning. This should disturb you on a level beyond history, because the same pattern shows up in personal stories, in corporate boardrooms, and political movements. The startup that wins its market so completely that it stops innovating. The athlete who wins a championship and loses their drive. The politician who wins an election and loses their principles trying to stay in power. There is a reason the ancient Greeks had a specific word for this. They called it hubris, not simply arrogance, but the specific madness that overcomes people and institutions when they have won so much that they lose the ability to imagine losing. They stop preparing for threats. They stop questioning their assumptions. They stop doing the hard work that made them great because the victory seems to prove that they were always going to be great. And the gods, the Greeks believed, always punished hubris. Not because the gods were cruel, but because the universe is. Systems that stop adapting die. Powers that stop questioning their advantages lose them. Victories that are not understood become the seedbed for the next defeat. But the cruelest example of all does not come from ancient times. It comes from the 20th century, from a superpower that won the defining ideological struggle of the modern era, and then spent the next 3 decades dismantling everything that had made it powerful enough to win. We are talking about the United States of America. And we are talking about 1991. The Cold War ended with a Soviet collapse so complete that it looked, in that moment, like the absolute vindication of every American value, every American institution, every American choice made since 1945. Liberal democracy had defeated authoritarian communism. The free market had defeated central planning. America had won, not just a war, but an argument about how human civilization should be organized. It was the greatest American victory since 1945. And the decisions made in the decade that followed would haunt the country for generations. With the Soviet threat gone, American defense spending was cut. The intelligence community was downsized. The sense of shared national purpose that had held the country together through 40 years of existential competition began to dissolve. Why sacrifice? The war was over. America had won. The peace dividend, they called it. The money and attention saved by not competing with a superpower. It seemed like a reasonable prize to claim after 40 years of Cold War, but the United States had been shaped in every dimension by the competition with the Soviet Union. Its science and technology spending, its education system, its military readiness, its domestic political consensus, all of it had been forged under the pressure of existential competition. Remove the pressure and the forge goes cold. American infrastructure began a long decline. Educational achievement, which had been a national security priority since Sputnik, became a political football. The political consensus that had produced the GI Bill, the interstate highway system, NASA, and decades of broadly shared economic growth fractured as the common enemy that had sustained it disappeared. And then came the wars: Iraq, Afghanistan. Conflicts chosen at least in part because of the intoxicating confidence produced by being the world's only superpower. The same hubris that broke Rome, that broke Spain, that hollowed out the British Empire, expressed now in a different idiom but following the same ancient logic. We could keep going. We could talk about Japan after World War II, which lost the war and then became an economic superpower precisely because losing forced it to rebuild from scratch with modern infrastructure, modern institutions, and a population that knew exactly why it needed to work hard. Or about Germany, which did the same. Or about the Ottoman Empire after its stunning conquest of Constantinople in 1453, a victory so overwhelming that it convinced the Ottomans they had found the formula for eternal power, leading to centuries of institutional rigidity and technological complacency that left them shattered by the 19th century. Or about France after the Franco-Prussian War of 1870, not the loser France, but the winner Prussia, which became unified Germany, a Germany so intoxicated by its sudden continental dominance that it made the sequence of catastrophic decisions that led directly to the First World War. And then, not having learned. To the second, the pattern is real. It is not an accident. And the lesson is not that you should lose on purpose or that victory is meaningless. The lesson is about what you do the day after the victory. The powers that survived their wins were the ones that treated victory not as a conclusion but as a question. What do we do now? What did we almost lose that we need to protect? What did winning cost us that we need to rebuild? What assumptions did this victory confirm that we should actually be questioning? History is not a story of good guys and bad guys. It is a story of systems, pressures, incentives, and the human tendency to believe that the skills and decisions that produced past success will produce future success, even when everything around them has changed. The next time someone tells you they have won completely decisively, finally watch carefully. Because history suggests that is exactly when the real danger begins. If this video made you think differently about power, about victory, about the cost of getting what you want, share it with someone who needs to hear it. The History channel that asks the questions others skip is growing one curious mind at a time. Subscribe, and we will keep asking them together. Because the most important battles are not the ones that end with flags and parades. They are the ones that start the morning after.